Behold the power deep inside of the Mag Warframe. Although most of her skills provide little to no value, except, of course, for Magnetize. And she's normally very squishy, respectable shields notwithstanding. Mag shines in the arena. You won't last long against guns, but once you step into the arena, you're unstoppable, with absolutely unparalleled damage against any number of enemies. You should easily be able to take down any foe on equal footing inside of your gladiatorial combat ring. Now let's begin right off the bat by addressing the elephant in the room. Now there's a way to play Mag, it's something like this. All you have to do is grab your Lanka, load up your heavy gunners, take aim at them over there, fire toward the side of your bubble, and there they go. Your Lanka shot will bounce around inside the bubble and quickly eradicate basically any number of enemies of any level. And there's also an interesting tactic involving the Maraditron, or really any gun with semi-projectile, semi-hit scan bullets that procs radiation a lot especially. This can charge up those magnetized bubbles, so you just obliterate, again, basically any level. These tactics have been shown before, and I don't know who invented them, or I don't really care who popularized them. I just wanted to note that they exist and direct you to them if you're interested in that, but that is not how I personally play Mag. I do think it's nice to have the Lanka around just because its killing potential is so high with Mag, so let's quickly talk about that first. Here's the build, a medium expensive build, but very worth it. So the idea here is that the Lanka has very high crit chance and a good multiplier, as well as high-ish status chance, and it's pure elemental. It starts with electricity, which is a little unfortunate, but if you put a lot of gas on it, really as much gas as you can get, you're going to proc gas relatively consistently, and when you scope in on the Lanka, you get a flat 50% critical chance increase, which means that with this build you're guaranteed to crit, and you have a pretty high chance of proccing a gas proc, which will bounce around inside of those bubbles. Now it bounces very readily because the Lanka shots also have an innate 5-meter punch through, which is nuts. Enough of that technical nonsense, let's get down to the blood, the nitty-gritty, the Spartan training that will make you a sick Mag Gladiator. Let me show you the process again really quick. So we're going to spawn in these heavy gunners. You're going to want to magnetize them together. I find that finding 2 casts of Magnetize will make them a little bit more stable, so do a second cast if you have it. Then you're going to jump in. On your way, pepper them with some status procs with whatever secondary you're using. I have Sinoid Gamma Core at the moment. Then drop a slam attack and start going to town. I recommend using quick melee just because it feels a little bit faster to me overall, and you will absolutely decimate these enemies. And I'm going to show you underneath that quick melee. Look how high our combo count, like it's just insane how much damage you get. If an enemy strays outside, you can try to pull them back inside the magnetized bubble to keep yourself safe, or you can just cast another one. It's helpful to go between bubbles, so that is the basic flow of combat. You're going to want to find a group of enemies, create an arena for yourself by casting Magnetize once or twice, and then jump into the arena, pepper them with status procs, and start going crazy with your, Orthos Prime. So the Orthos Prime is pretty well known as a weapon with massive reach, and also pretty good stats otherwise, right? So with primed reach on here, we have basically the largest range reach of any weapon in the game, and we also, as you can see, have a very heavy status build. We have Weeping Wounds, Relentless Combination, Drifting Contact, Voltaic Strike, and Condition Overload, all supporting our status Slaughterfest. We also have Berserker. This weapon's crit chance is a little bit low. I found that Blood Rush was just slightly less effective than the other mods on here for this specific build, but Berserker is still good. It's got consistent enough crits to use Berserker, and obviously Pressure Point. So, it doesn't really matter which stance you use. I do think Bleeding Willow is slightly better, but it's not a big deal. That's one of the forma I put on here, and I don't really think it's worth it. Just use whatever. Now, besides the fact that it's a good weapon, the reason we're using the Orthos Prime is that it has large enough reach to make this work. As you can see, between the wall of our arena and our enemies, we don't have very much space, and if you get too close, the heavy gunners at least will knock you down. If you get really close, they can still do damage to you sometimes. So you have to be very, very careful not to get too close to them. As you can see, I started taking damage there. So you have to attack them while dancing inside this like edge of the arena, right? Now Relentless Combination bears special mention. This mod is reducing the heights of damage that we could reach with this weapon by a lot by taking up this mod slot. However, because you are often creating an arena and then building up your combo counter from 0, this mod staggeringly increases the speed at which we can get to a medium amount of damage, which is the key. We want to build up Weeping Wounds so that we're guaranteeing slash procs which is how we're going to be killing these enemies, very, very fast. We might not be constantly using the Orthos Prime. Mag can't survive in melee combat without being inside her arenas, so you can't just have your combo counter all the time. You may very well need to build it up from 0 every time you use it, which is why this mod is good here. I'm going to start emphasizing this more, but keep in mind that this Orthos Prime setup is specific to this Gladiator mag. This is a tool for Mag to use inside of her gladiatorial arenas, specifically. If I were to build the Orthos Prime for a different situation, I would build it differently. If you asked me for a general objective Orthos Prime build, I would make something different. This is specific to this loadout. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about the Mag Prime build. I showed you it at the beginning, but as you can see, we have a bit of extra melee damage. This doesn't do a lot, but it's relatively cheap, and this build ended up being really good without being very expensive, so I wanted to go for some budget options. Handspring is really important here. If you make a mistake and get too close to the inside of your arenas, then you might get knocked down, and if you get knocked out of your bubble, you're going to die very, very quickly. So this will let you get up very fast. Constitution helps a little bit too. Prime Continuity and Constitution will keep your bubbles existing long enough for you to complete your combat with the enemies, and Stretch and Overextended will make them big enough that it is even possible to dance around inside them, not on the edge, but not in the middle. Streamline makes them a little more affordable. Redirection rebuffs Mag's very respectable shields to 1,110, which is pretty nice, but some things pierce shields, such as Toxin and Slash procs, and Rapid Resilience reduces the duration of those quite a bit. If you'd like a whole video on Rapid Resilience, I actually have one, check in the description. Intensify is here because Polarize and Magnetize can do okay damage, and I think it's worth having just a little bit of it back. Magnetize actually gives you a damage multiplier, and without Intensify, it ends up being a negative damage multiplier. It actually reduces your damage. So with Intensify, it goes back up to a 1.2, you're barely increasing your damage, but you're not losing damage, which is important. And these mods are pretty cheap, so as I was saying before, as a newer Mag player, maybe you picked Mag as your starter, this is actually not such a difficult build to make. Stretch, Intensify, and Streamline are super core mods. You'll get Redirection very early, Steel Charge is a relatively common aura. You can use a normal copy of Continuity, Primed isn't necessary, and then the build will function without Constitution. The only mod that you absolutely need is Overextended, and you'll get that from Corrupted runs. Rapid Resilience is mostly important to keep you alive at later levels. As with Handspring, you're not going to encounter enough like heavy gunners and stuff for it to be super dangerous without this. So a pretty budget build overall. The rest of the build consists of tools to help you increase the power of Condition Overload on your Orthos Prime, as this grants you scaling exponential epic melee damage that, if you want to learn more about, I have a video on that in the description. With every status proc that is on the target, we want lots of different kinds. We're going to get a Slash proc pretty readily from the Orthos Prime. We're going to get an Electricity proc on lots of enemies thanks to the Chain Lightning effect from Voltaic Strike. We also have a chance to get Impact Puncture procs, okay, whatever. But also, the Orthos Prime has a chance on Blast proc when you do a slam attack. And the Sanoid Gamma Core with this build has a high chance to proc Gas on the group of enemies. You might also proc Magnetic on one. My Artax could give an enemy Cold, and Jin has a precept that will give all enemies inside its Fatal Attraction aura a Corrosive proc. It doesn't say that on the mod, but you'll see that. So we've got our enemies bunched up, and we're going to fire the Sanoid Gamma Core in a little bit. There's a Gas proc that just went off. Now we're going to get in closer. And there it goes. As you can see, we got a Corrosive proc there. And by slam attacking, you can grab your Blast proc on at least some of the enemies. You might be able to create a Sentinel weapon build that inflicts better status procs on a group than this Artax. It's just an example of being able to stack up status procs heavily on a single target. Corrosive, Electricity, possibly Blast, Slash, possibly Cold, Gas, possibly Magnetic, is a lot of status procs, and you can get that damage scaling up really, really high. But there's really no specific need to use these methods of doing so. If you'd prefer a different element on your Orthos Prime for your one single dual stat element, use something else. If you can come up with a build that will give you more status procs from your Sentinel than this, which I'm sure you can, use it. Now, the Sanoid Gamma Core is a piece of tech with a different purpose, though. The Sanoid Gamma Core is kind of a weird weapon where, like, it's very strong, like the DPS is really good, but its ammo economy is just trash, and as a single target weapon, it can't really deal with a crowd or any sustained group of enemies. But since we're mostly not going to be using it for that, I've built something very niche. Not only can you use this as a status cannon to spray enemies in your arena with a little bit of gas, hopefully, that will give you some extra damage on condition overload, this weapon also gives you the ability to proc the Cephalon Suda ability, which will increase your energy and give you some back. That's really important because you basically die if you're not inside of one of your arenas, so you need energy to cast them, which is fantastic. However, it also serves a secret hidden purpose. Because you know what will ruin your life with this build? Yeah, I thought so. You can't put certain people in an arena. Some people just won't play. These guys think they're the referees of the entire universe, and they won't play with you inside your little arena. They don't want to be fair. Synoid Gammacore is here to take a massive dump on these enemies. Done. No problem. Done. No, just keep going about your business. That's fine. Gas damage is fantastic against Corpus, and magnetic is also great against their shields. This weapon does tons of both, nothing else. Also serves as a way to inflict statuses on your gladiatorial enemies that are cooperating. Very, very good fit. You can use this thing to pop nullifiers off extremely fast, even up to very high levels. It'll mow through their bubble really fast because of its high fire rate. Fantastic weapon that makes it easy breezy to kill nullifiers, and still accompanies you very nicely as you quick melee everything else into oblivion. Something to keep in mind is that although Mag's other abilities are kind of underwhelming, they're not useless. Like, sometimes you can do something useful with them. You can pull more enemies into your arena using your pull, your one. You can also use it to pull enemies off of cliffs and stuff, which is sometimes good. When you're not butchering enemies in half like this, sometimes you allies need a little bit of crowd control for like just the secco because they're getting shot too much. And Mag still technically has a fourth skill, so I guess you can use that. But one legitimately very useful thing that you can use Mag's Polarize for is killing lots of very low-level enemies. Our Polarize is pretty big with this build, and although it's not that strong, against groups of enemies like this, you're going to see that as the wave hits them, it removes pretty much all their armor by proccing nearby allies. And you gotta remember the Synoid Gammacore is single target, but it has a very high chance to proc gas on these now unarmored enemies. So all you have to do is point it in their general direction, and it'll proc gas and blow them out of existence. Remember, this weapon's base damage is still insanely high, it just has like no ammo economy, but if you can just tap fire it like this and kill guys, then it's not really a problem. Because Mag has a lot of shields, you're actually really easily able to do like lower level stuff like this, and then if it's a higher level mission and you have a group, like you're kinda fine, you're pretty heavy artillery if you get the right situation. Tell me how you enjoyed my Gladiator Mag build, and let me know what your results are with it. If you have any preferred weapon for dusting enemies with status procs and or killing nullifiers, remember you gotta accomplish both and you just got your secondary to do it, so be careful. And if there's any other weapon that you think is good as an arena slaying powerhouse like the Orthos Prime built in this bizarre way, there are a couple other weapons I can think of that might be able to do the job, and I'm curious to see what people think. Thanks very much for watching. Check me out on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon if you're interested in more, and subscribe if you had a good time. I'll see you next time.